And today's message, I just really want to encourage you because, come on, let's be real, man. I've been having a lot of conversations with people and watching conversations. I've been watching people's Facebook posts in our church. I've been watching what goes on in the news. I don't watch the news too much. I just kind of choose when I watch it and how much of it I watch. And we can all say that there are a lot of conversations in your workplace within people, and there are decisions that need to be made in our now. And I remember the Lord, just as a pastor and as a leader, like, how do you lead a church forward in some of these decision making that people have to make personally, and then as a church we have to make a decision on behalf of. So I sometimes I feel a bit stuck, I'll be honest with you, because not only do I have to make a decision for me and my family, me and my marriage, me and my children, I'm also in a place where the Lord has given me an opportunity to be in a place of influence that gets to direct the church forward. And so sometimes it can get quite challenging. You know, people say to me, I don't know which decision to make for my family. I go, try making one for heaps of families. I was like, stop moaning about it. Get in your prayer closet and start praying up. Get some information. Just don't allow all information to dictate your decisions. Get fear out of your life. Get worry out of your life. Get anger out of your life. And get the gossip out of your life. And then start to make some decisions out of place of strength, not out of weakness. Because when we make decisions out of place of weakness, if we make a decision, I'm reading this book, and it said, people who are tired and making decisions make tired decisions. So you got to come to the place where you're waiting on the Lord so that He can renew your strength. So don't make any decisions while you're feeling tired. Don't make any decisions when you're feeling confused. Don't make any decisions when you've got a whole lot of doubt, you're unsure. And by the way, everyone in this room has doubt. Everyone in this room has some uncertainties in their life they can't be exactly sure of. But when you deal with those things and get those things out of your way, fear, anger, gossip, worry, because they don't belong in your life. Fear, as long as fear is present in your decision making, it means the love of God is not present in their place of decision making. Because the Bible teaches us that the perfect love casts out all fear. They cannot cohabit one another. Fear and the love of God cannot cohabit with one another. They don't exist together. It's either one or the other. So if there's fear in your life and you can identify it and you're brave enough to do that diagnosis and allow God to diagnose that, then deal with the fear first and then start to make decision. I'm not just talking about the jab or no jab. I'm talking about every life decision. Every life decision. And so the Lord just said this to me, which is going to prepare us for our message today. He said, I want you to navigate through the now. Everyone say now. By leaving your before. Everyone say before. And visualizing your after. Everyone say after. I want you to navigate through the now by leaving your before and visualizing your after. And the reason why is because we can get so caught up in what's going on right now. And one thing is, don't live in denial about one right now. Don't live in denial, because you'll never deal with anything. You'll never walk through it. You'll just keep denying it. This isn't happening. This isn't happening. This isn't happening. I'm going to just close my eyes, close my ears, and hopefully this will dust away. The dust will settle. It will just blow away like the wind, and things can get back to normal. I'm here to ruin your theology. I'm here to ruin that. There is no more normal. There's no more normal. So leave your behind, leave your before, leave it. When God took the Israelites through Moses out of slavery, 400 years, 10 generations of families, they were just riddled, and all they had was this perspective, I'm a slave, so they thought like a slave, they lived like a slave. But they wanted to run back. And so when we're trying to navigate through our now, we need to learn how to leave our before and start visualizing our after, because the dust will settle. Come on, church. The dust will settle. Come on, Turangi. The dust will settle. And everyone that's watching online, the dust will settle. It will blow over. Some of the things that you're walking through, it's not forever. then you read the book of Peter, 1 Peter chapter 5, it says, and when you have suffered just a little while. Yeah, but James, this last 2 weeks, they've been hard, I understand it. And then God doesn't live in time though, friend. He doesn't live in the space of time. He lives outside of time. He created time for us because he knew how feeble we could be. He knew that we're not God. He is, so he lives outside of time. So he's not dictated by it. So when you've been going through something for months, he's been watching it for just a day. He's not in denial that you're walking through pain because he lives beyond time and he lives beyond pain. And when you can trust the Lord that lives beyond time and live beyond pain, please don't make decisions that are going to ruin your tomorrow by making a decision in pain today. I want you to navigate through now by leaving your tomorrow and visualizing your after. And I hope by the end of this message, there's some hope given to you to keep looking for the after. So I've titled this message, Before and After. I wish I had an awesome as before and after photo, but I think I have too many of them. Hey, before, after, back to before, after, back to before. Woo, that would have been mean as, right? Just be able to show an image of like, here's the before and after, ripped as, what I was like, what I am now. But unfortunately, God's still processing that life. So I don't have this awesome ass photo for you. Everyone has a before. Everyone will have an after. It's whether you're going to have an aftermath or an after effect. Here's the definition of aftermath: the consequences of a significant unpleasant event. The consequences of an aftermath is the consequences of a significant unpleasant event. After effect is an effect that follows after the primary action of something. Let me say that again. An after effect means this: an effect that follows after the primary action of something. Now I know there's a little bit play on words, but just come with me. Just entertain the whole thought. Your decisions that you make today are going to either determine an aftermath of destruction or an after effect, an effective life. One that follows after good decisions, sound decisions. Decisions made out of peace. Decisions that follow through by you still loving other people rather than judging them for their decisions and getting all riled up because you've turned these personal opinions into an idol. And you're wanting everybody else to worship what you worship. So everybody has a before, everybody is going to have an after. But you can either have, the question is, are you going to have an aftermath or an after effect? So, but let me now talk to you about the now, because it's really, really important. We're all here right now. You're here right now. All right? Your children, even though they are here right now, some of them are so young that they can't make decisions for themselves. So you're in place of their future right now. And so how do we navigate through now? Because we're bombarded with so much information, bombarded with the diagnosis. We're bombarded by medical reports. We're bombarded by financial challenges. We're bombarded by all these decisions. And there's a story in the Bible that always intrigues me. I probably go back to it far too many times, but I think it's going to really help us understand. And it's the whole story of the Israelites. And the story that we're about to read, it's Moses and the Israelites having to know how to navigate through now. Moses was called by God to draw the slaves out of, the Israelites, that were in slavery for 400 years. That's around about 10 generations. Can you imagine the first generation that understood what it was like under Joseph? It was fruitful. They were multiplying. Things were great. And so they had a memory of it. But then the next generation had felt the pain of having to grow up in slavery. And then the third generation, and then the fourth generation, they were losing sight of what God did and what God was going to do. Remember, He gave a promise to Abraham. I'm going to take you to the promised land. The promised land, Abraham must have got it wrong. He must have got a nut loose or something like that, because Egypt wasn't the promised land. No, it wasn't the promised land. And so the fifth generation, they don't know anything else. They only know how to be a slave, live like a slave, eat like a slave, talk like a slave, think like a slave. The sixth generation, same. Seventh generation, same. And there are people maybe in this room that are still struggling with something that was generational. But you are here right now, and you get to make decisions right now. You might not have had any choice. Oh, come with me. You might not have had any choice about what happened to you, but you have a choice right now of how you can outlive and how you can walk. God feels what happened to you. He feels it. He understood it. He was right there with you. But now He's with you right now, and He's saying, I'm giving you an opportunity. So there are 5 phases that God has been walking me through and how I navigate through now. The first phase is this: exploring. And in Numbers chapter 13, we hear of a story. They've come out of Egypt. Hey man, they crossed the Red Sea. Come on, man. Like, that's enough for me. Like, God, open up Taupo so I can just walk across the Turangi. We would have a revival in Turangi if the lake opens, eh? And so this is what happened to them. They crossed the Red Sea without a water on them. And God demolished the Egyptians afterwards, after them. It's a sign of baptism, by the way. And it was also a sign that He doesn't want them to turn back. And then they walk on and they see, and then all of a sudden, it only took days, by the way, to get to the edge of the promised land that God had called them to. Just days. Some reckon 11 days. Some theologians maybe just a couple of weeks. But nonetheless, it's a short time period. Now, we all know in hindsight that they ended up walking around the wilderness for 40 years. And this is the moment, this is the now that is going to determine what happens. Now, we got this great hindsight, right? We can read the Bible. We can learn from their mistakes. Thank you, Jesus, that you can learn from your ancestors' mistakes. And so here they are right now. And Moses, in Numbers chapter 13, verse 1 to 2, the Lord said to Moses, send some men to explore the land of Canaan. This is the promised land, which I am giving to the Israelites. From each ancestral tribe, send one of its leaders. So that's 12 leaders that got chosen, and they've been sent out. And there's a phase that we have to go. We're all exploring, right, this world that we live in. We've been shaken up over the last 2 years. March last year, was earlier over across the world, it was just like bam. And then here in March in 2020, bam. You know, all my family that have traveled and moved their whole life from another country to here. And some of them hadn't even been here that long. And then bang, here comes lockdown. Now they're faced with decisions whether they have to move back home, whether they can even live here in Taupo and in New Zealand. It's amazing that the last 2 years, right? We haven't even finished the second year yet. It's just crazy. But we're here right now. And we got some decisions to make. And right now we're exploring the land, exploring options. I had some people say, you know what? And I'm not making fun of this. But some people are definitely seriously thinking about going bush. Go off the grid, put some solar panels up. And I'm not making fun of this because people are seriously thinking like this. And some of you are like, man, that's my life, bro. I would love that. That'd be awesome. The problem is, are the people in the bush? God will never call you somewhere or something that is void of people. You could go bush and then travel in. Okay, ka pai, no props. But you can't lead trees to Jesus. They already worship God. Woo! You know, your trees worship God more than you do. Woo! They already, all creation glorifies God already. You can't teach them anything. They're going to teach you something. So why would you make decisions that are going to be void of you influencing people? Trees don't have fear. People do. So we're exploring. The second phase that we walk through is options. Everyone say options. In verse 18, the scriptures before this, he just starts to name the 12 leaders that are going to go and explore. Verse 18, see what the land is like. Now Moses is giving them some things to, when you're exploring, I want to give you some things to look for, okay? Now they've got some options. Numbers 13, verse 18. See what the land is like and whether the people who live there are strong or weak, are few or many. What kind of land do they live in? Is it good or bad? What kind of towns do they live in? Are they unwalled or fortified? How is the soil? Is it fertile? Is it poor? Are there trees in it or not? Do your best to bring back some fruit of the land. It was the season for the first ripe grapes. When they reached the valley of Eshcol, they cut off a branch bearing a single cluster of grapes. Look at this, man. 2 of them carried it on a pole. Man, that's some huge grapes. 2 of them carried it on a pole between them, along with some pomegranates and figs. Verse 24, that place was called the Valley of Eshcol because of the cluster of grapes the Israelites cut off there. And so now these leaders who are going to go explore the promise, everyone say promise. They've been given these options. And right now in your now, whatever it is, you've got all these options. We've got all these options. Is this going to be good or is this going to be bad? Is this going to be healthy for me or is this going to be detrimental to my health? Is this going to be fertile or is this going to be poor? Is this going to be unwalled and exposed or is it going to be fortified and strong? Are the people weak or are they strong? Are there many of them or are there few of them? Everyone under the sound of my voice has decisions and options at hand right now. I was talking to a brother yesterday and he's just uncertain about what decisions he makes. And I said, well, just don't make one until you find the peace of God in it. He's got all these options. You've got all these options. And in your now, those options can lure you to something that is going to give you an aftermath or something that's going to give you an after effect. The third phase that the Lord showed me was test. Everyone say test. Numbers chapter 13 verse 25 says this, at the end of 40 days, everyone say 40, they returned from exploring the land. Here's why the next point, the next phase is test, because the number 40 biblically means test, trial. Test and trial. That's what the number 40 represents. So here's Moses sends out the 12 leaders to explore the land, and they explored it for 40 days. In other words, there was a testing time of what kind of report, we'll get to the report soon, what kind of report they were going to bring back to the Israelites. They went, they scoured the whole land. They went in there, they were looking at the options, they were marking down, yep, this soil is good, yep, these things are good. By the way, if God promised to you something, He would never promise you anything that would not bear fruit. But for some reason, Moses just wanted to clarify whether God got it right or not. Go explore the land that God is giving us. Just see if it's good or bad. It doesn't make sense. And so here's the 12 leaders. They now put one on a test. Can you imagine 40 days in a land that is foreign? Oh, listen to this. Can you imagine standing the test of 40 days in a land when all you can think about is how you used to live? Remember, they still had a slave mentality. It's amazing, man. While you still got a slave mentality, how can you see the after when you're still thinking about before? They didn't get that God wanted to cross the Red Sea, and obliterate their past and not want them to turn back. So there's testing time, right? You've done your exploring. You've gathered up some options. And now the test. A or B? Circle yes or no. You're thinking about your finances. Should we buy that car? Or should we not? Should we go into that mortgage? Or should we just hold off a little bit? You've got all these options. And now you're standing in your now with a test. The cool thing is, God's right there with your test. He's just wondering after 40 days, are you going to see what he sees? Or come back seeing what you've always seen? He gave them an option to see where he was taking them. You will see their response. The next phase that he walks us through in our now is the report. They've gone through the test, and now they're coming back with a report. Everyone say report. Verse 26, they came back to Moses and Aaron and the whole Israelite community at Kadesh in the desert of Paran. They reported to them and to the whole assembly and showed them the fruit of the land. You'd think that'd be enough, right? Yo! Shoulder pressing between two of them, grapes and pomegranates. Yo, look at this! Look how awesome this land is. You'd think that'd be enough to say, whoa, we were just in the wilderness. We had to call down God to send some manna just so that we can eat. But you're telling me the fruit is so big and so luscious and so fruitful, you'd think that'd be enough report. I wonder who was carrying that. It doesn't say. I wonder if it was Caleb and Joshua carrying the pomegranates and the grapes. You'll soon find out why that matters. But for some reason, 10 of the 12 came back with a bad report. Verse 27, they gave Moses this account. We went into the land to which you sent us, and it does flow with milk and honey. Here is its fruit. Verse 28. Oh. But the people who live there are powerful, and their cities are fortified and very large. We even saw the descendants of Anak there. You know what's funny? Because if I go into a piece of land and I see, man, it's fortified, I'm just like, that's good. That means I'm going to go take on a fortified city. They couldn't see the positive outcome in this. They just saw what was against them. Why? Because they still had a slave mentality. But the people there are powerful and their cities are fortified and very large. We even saw descendants of Anak. The Amalekites live there in Negev. The Hittites, Jebusites, and Amorites live in the hill country. And the Canaanites live near the sea along the Jordan. And so all of a sudden they're giving this report. 10 of them give a bad report. 10 of them saw only what they had always believed about themselves. They never saw that God is for us. He took me out of 400 years of slavery. He took me out of the Egyptians' oppression, suppression. He took me and crossed me over the Red Sea. The waters parted. He came over. He took them all out. He took me here, and in only a matter of weeks, I made it to the promised land. But because I went there and I failed the test. That's what they're saying. They failed the test. They could only see from a mind that was still stuck in there before. You cannot navigate through now by still thinking about your before. And so the next phase is decisions. So after a report has been done, I looked at all my options, went exploring, looked at more of my options. I now have a test, and now I'm about to make some decisions. I don't know if the team haven't got this, so I want you to write this down because I only read it in this morning. You are born looking like your parents and die looking like your decisions. You are born looking like your parents, but you die looking like your decisions. Do you want to die looking like your decisions? Do you want your children to die looking like your poor decisions? What you don't deal with today, you leave for your children tomorrow. So as long as you got debt, you're just going to keep giving them debt. You closed your eyes and thought, oh, we're just going to just sweep it under the carpet. When we're dead and long gone, my kids can deal with it. Oh, they might not deal with your debt, but they'll deal with the habit of debt. You're born looking like your parents, but you die looking like your decisions. I never had this written down either, but I want you to write it down. You know, the best decision that you could ever make is the right one. The next best decision that you could ever make is the wrong one. The worst decision that you could ever make is no decision at all. I'll say that again. The best decision you can make is the right one. The next best decision you can make is the wrong one. The worst decision you could ever make is none at all. Numbers chapter 13, verse 30. Then Caleb, thank God for Caleb's. You remember the old song? Lord, I need a heart like Caleb, who looked at the land and said, the Lord is with us. Lord, I need a spirit like Caleb. What was the rest of the words? Who looked at the land? No, who took the land? Anyway, we need a spirit like Caleb. Out of all those 10 that were spreading this bad report, here comes Caleb. And he says this, then Caleb silenced the people before Moses and said, we should go up and take possession of the land, for we can certainly do it. So Caleb made a decision in his heart that we can do it. But because of the poor decision of the 10 and the report, Moses, the Bible says Moses, Aaron, Caleb, and Joshua tore their clothes and they wept because they knew what followed after. Another 40 years of wilderness. Friends, do you want to go another 40 years? Living with your poor decision? Or no decision at all? Verse 31. But the men who had gone up with him said, we can't attack those people. They are stronger than we are. And they spread among the Israelites a bad report. Oh, this is where gossip comes in. Gossip's nasty when it's rooted in fear. Gossip's nasty when it's rooted in anxiety. Gossip's nasty when it's rooted in anger. It's nasty. Don't let gossip filtrate your mind. Stay strong, courageous, bold. Don't get angry back. Don't gossip back. Stand in the peace of God. They spread a bad report about the land they explored. They said, the land we explored devours those living in it. All the people we saw there are of great size. Verse 33, we saw the Nephilim there. The descendants of Anak come from the Nephilim. We seemed like grasshoppers in our own eyes. And we looked the same to them. Hang on. How can the author write down we looked like the same to them? It's because they were conversating with the enemy. The enemy must have told them, look at you. So many of us are conversating with the enemy. And we're losing sight of who God called us to be. And we're starting to believe the lies that have been spoken over your life, that you're small, you're just a grasshopper. Oh, hell no, you're a giant slayer. James is a giant slayer. People might think, man, you Stevens, you're overconfident. No, we just know who we are. I'm a giant slayer, I'm not a grasshopper. So all of a sudden, they got some decisions to make about the report. Caleb makes the decision, we can take it. Our God is big, our God is great. The other 10 said, we can't, we're small, we're weak, we're feeble. I want you to write this down. I did get it. Yeah, I did put it up there, team. Yeah, because too many of us think of ourselves too less, and you think it's humility. Humility is, C.S. Lewis says this, humility is not thinking less of yourself. It's thinking of yourself less. And too many times the Israelites thought they were being humble. No, we can't take that land. No, we can't do this. They're too big. Can I say to you that true humility is this? It's about thinking yourself less. This is what I wrote down. Humility is not thinking less of yourself. It's thinking of yourself less and more of God. Come with me. Somebody come with me. Humility is not thinking less of yourself. It's thinking of yourself less and more of God. In our nation, too many Kiwis, too many Maori, too many PI think lowly of themselves. We've got this tall poppy syndrome. And we look at Americans and we think they're just up themselves. Maybe they got something that we just don't have. That's why I love my Aussie counterparts. Some of them are buffheads, but I just like their attitude. Because it's like, we got this. We can do this. I mean, look at the Australian rugby team. They still think they can win. Do you know the preliminary of every game against the All Black? Have you ever seen their ads? There was one ad that they made the All Blacks put the All Blacks' faces on sheep, and these Australians were going, come on, shoo sheep, shoo sheep, shoo sheep. I was over there watching it, and I'm just like, you can do all of that all you want, but we are the champs. Too many Kiwis, too many Maori, too many PIs think you're being humble by thinking less of yourself. That is ungodly, because God doesn't think less of you. It's thinking of yourself less and more of God. So here's the problem though. Here's the problem that we have. After 400 years of generational slavery, these leaders are thinking in the now is heavily influenced by their before. How do we know this? Well, let's have a quick look, and then we're going to get to after. Woo! Numbers chapter 14, verse 1. That night, all the members of the community raised their voices and wept aloud. All the Israelites grumbled against Moses and Aaron, and the whole assembly said to them, if only we had died in Egypt or in the wilderness. They hadn't even walked into the promise yet and seen God move, and they're already making assumptions about their after. If only we had died before. We were better off before a slave, even though we had hardly anything to eat. We were better off before as a slave, because that's all I knew. That's all I was comfortable with. You know the reason why people were struggling to move forward? Is because they've become so accustomed to their before, and then now that if they got into their after, they might feel so uncomfortable they don't know how to live with themselves. Verse 3, why is the Lord bringing us out of this land? Only let us fall by the sword. Our wives, our children will be taken. And I know there are people in here that are thinking, what about my wife? What about my children? If I lose my job in 2 weeks' time, what about my wife? What about my children? Can I say to all the men of God in this room, make a decision out of strength. The Lord is for you. He is not against you. He is with you. He's the God that can take you into your promise. He's the God that can provide Jehovah Jireh for your life. Don't be afraid. Step into it. Be bold. Be courageous, like he said to Joshua. Verse 4, and they said to each other, we should choose a leader and go back to Egypt. And that would have just hurt my heart if Advanced Church said, give us a new leader. One that's going to do what we want him to do. Not what God wants him to do. What God wants us to do. You can see why pastors carry such a lot, right? I'm telling you, I'm super confident to see where God's going to take us. You know the after is going to look like an after effect. Don't you worry about this, Advanced Church. Oh man, I'm excited about it. Verse 10, we'll get to after real soon. But the whole assembly talked about stoning them. Do you know why? Because Caleb spoke up, Joshua spoke up, Moses and Aaron spoke up. But they said, no, we'd stone them now. And because you're still stuck in your before. Do you know some of you are stoning your marriage because you're still stuck in the past that you never dealt with? Casey was talking about getting stoned, but one day he'll get stoned for his faith. still hold tightly onto your before, you'll never walk into your after. And here's the last process, after. I want to show you an image. Just weeks ago, we went on a hike, a group of us. Let's put that image up. I know I had to stretch it so it doesn't look as cool as it is on my phone. That's our maunga. We went up hiking the Blythe Hut. It was about 5 in the morning, and I just woke up. Everyone was snoring. Oh, sorry, not everyone. There was about 2 of them, 3 of them snoring, and it felt like the whole cabin was snoring. And I woke up, and it wasn't the snoring that was bothering me. It was that I was stuck in the cabin, and just outside my window, I could see the maunga, the mountain. And I'm just like, it was a beautiful time. It was a bit darker than this. And I just gapped it. And Liam was sitting next to the door because the guys in our room were snoring too loud. I stepped over him and he woke up and he was like, bro, what are you doing? I was like, I'm going to go pray. I'm going to go hang out with God. You want to come? And he goes, oh, okay, never mind. No. He's all right. He needed to sleep. And so I went out and I just kept climbing. And see this image here, I stopped and had some time with the Lord, talking about my son, talking about our church and what we're navigating through. See, that's the problem, man. Too many times you haven't removed yourself from the noise to hear from God. And all you're hearing from is actually noise that's amplified to your degree of understanding. But when you remove yourself from the noise, you start to hear the degree of God's. And so we're up there, and I said, Lord, and I'm talking to him a whole bunch of stuff. And over the horizon there, just to the right, you can see the sun coming up. I knew that Taupo was in sight there. So I decided I'm going to go walk and get over it. But the closer I got, the bigger the mountain became. And then I realized I'm not going to get there, Lord, in time to pray over the town that you had given me to influence and to lead, Lord. And then the Lord clearly said to me this. He said, I didn't bring you up to this mountain to show you what I've already given you. He said, I brought you to this mountain to show you what I'm about to give you, which is this next image. There's Taranaki right in the background. He said, I didn't bring you up here to show you what I have already given you. I brought you up here to show you what I'm about to give you. And I'm here to say that when we lose sight of the after, because we're so stuck in the now and only thinking about the now, and because we're being influenced and impacted by our before, it means that hopelessness is creeping up on your door and it's knocking at your conscience and your thinking and your heart, and that vision and that dream that you thought was about to happen is now feeling like that it won't happen because of COVID, because of lockdowns. Oh, the last time I checked, I serve a bigger God than COVID, a bigger God than lockdown, a bigger God than my government, a bigger God than the natural circumstance. I serve a God that is God of the before, God of the now, and He's the God of the after. If you believe that, somebody shout amen. Here's why this means a lot to me. Remember, God speaks to you the way He knows you're going to receive it. Because when I was 12 years old, put it up, Tim. When I was 12 years old, the Lord said this to me on 46B Rotakawa Street. I will make you a father of many nations and a brother to many others. I'm starting to see that outwork now. I'm starting to see the father of many nations is what God's called me to pastor and lead. The brother to many others, I now have stepped into the INC chairman role to look after our churches and to lead our churches in our movement. I'm only 36. I still got 30 years on me. Imagine what we could do in another 30 years. So when the Lord spoke to me, I have never let this go. When I wake up and I felt and things turn to crap throughout the week, I'll still wake up and remind myself, I will make you a father of many nations. Brother, there's leadership on your life. Here's why that photo was really cool, the second one. This is another promise. And after that, the Lord said to me, He said, this was 10 years ago. You will plant churches from the east to the west, from the north to the south, and everywhere in between. And He specifically said, when He said East, Gisborne, my hometown, and we're going to be planting a church there in the next season to come. And then He said, and all the way to Taranaki and everywhere in between. And that's why when the Lord took me up to the mountain, He said, I didn't want to bring you up here to show you what I already gave you. I want to show you what I'm about to to give you. I got bigger plans for you. I got a purpose. I got a vision for you. I know that my brother and sister-in-law felt at some point in their life that God was calling them to Gisborne to plant a church. And then, I'm not going to say the name, but then a brother came into the life of our church, and I said, what's God's plan for you? This was only a few days ago. He said this. He said, it's a hard pill to swallow. What's the hard pill? Come on, let's eat it together. And he says, I believe God's calling me to pastor and to be a leader. I'm like, oh, flip, that's awesome, bro. And then he's just new in the life of our church, right? And then I said to him, where do you have an unction, or do you have a feeling of where God may send you? And he says, to Taranaki, that's where I'm from. I'm like, oh boy, somebody tell me that God ain't working something in for good, that all of a sudden God is already, see, what we're in our now, God is planning our after. He's starting to intricately put them together. He's working on people. He's starting to put his strategic plan. All he's asking you is to walk through now with confidence, walk through now with strength, walk now with him, hand by hand, side by side. It's not going to be too hard for too long. It's not going to be a struggle for too long. There's an after, and he's wanting to give it to you. The next part, I know time's gone, but this is super exciting. You don't need lunch. This is a good lunch. This is good bread. For the last 10 years, the Lord put a dream in my heart. For the last, how long have we been in this building? About close to 7 years, somewhere around there. And that building next door was all empty before we got here. This was a muck, by the way. And there was an opportunity where I had to say to the church at some point, I think it was 2014, that we can't pay the lease anymore on this building. We're going to have to say goodbye to it. I felt like a failure. Then God came through. Someone paid $10,000. The landlord worried about the other $5,000, and then he cut the lease in half for the following year. And then we end up buying this building. Who would have thought? I never would have thought that as a 12-year-old on 46B at Otakawa Street, that God would even use a kid like me, a Hori Mori, that he would ever use someone like me to do his great plans, to do his great things. And so when we took on this church and we came into this church, I saw their building. I said, one day we're going to have their building. And then just at the beginning of this year, or end of last year, one of our committee of management members, they bought the building. They've done it all up. Now we're in it. And the vision that I had on there was twofold. It was a training ministry facility to train up leaders and to train up pastors. And that's what we're starting to do now. All the creativity, all the strategy and planning is happening in their building, of seeing God do what he wants to do, planting churches from the east to the west, from the north to the south, right? But there was the second fold of this, is that I really had a heart to start a performing arts school here in Taupō. And the cool thing is, on Tuesday, earlier this year, I'll tell you the story, earlier this year, my old performing arts school principal, I go back about 10 years, with the performing arts school in Auckland, and he came to visit. He just came to hang out and talk and discuss some things. And we were here at the building, and I said, hey, would you come over there? Because they're renovating it at the moment. So I took him over to their building over there. It was still a mess. They were still renovating. And I just said, can I just help you with visualizing something? And he said, yeah, sure, why not? I said, I can see this place filled with musicians, with people studying music, rather than having to travel all the way to Auckland or another institute. They can stay in provincial New Zealand. And I can see us partnering with you guys, if you were up for it, that you would offer an internship or create an annex here in Taupō. And it kind of maybe just went over the head a little bit for him. It was probably a little bit too much for him to do. This was earlier this year, before the lockdown. I think it was in March. And then on Tuesday, just gone, I get a phone call from him. He said, hey, I was just talking to the board, and they want to pilot a New Zealand certificate of music with your church next year. There's always an after. We're struggling with the now, but God's got an after. And I'm in my office, and I got him on speaker. I closed the office door, and while he was talking, I'm going like this. And then my wife walks in and she was like, and I'm just like this, because I read it all down. And she was like, came around and read it, and she was like, I met with them. They even said, hey, we want you to help us put the internship program together and what it could look like. And I said, when do you want to meet up? They said, on Friday. So on Zoom on Friday, I'm meeting up with them. I met up with them. And we discussed the whole thing. And we're starting to put it together. The beautiful thing is that they need 10 students to be able to do it. I said, how much do you need? And so in 2022, we're going to be piloting our church, piloting with this performing arts school, a New Zealand certificate of music. And hopefully the following year, it'll be a New Zealand certificate of music and of worship leading. It's amazing. Some people it might not really tick you, but that when God puts a dream and a vision on your heart, if you're going to be totally immersed by what only happens now and what's happened to you before, you're going to miss and never visualize your after. So next year, we're going to have a performing arts New Zealand certificate of music. I know the next slide, I already talked about it. He said that I will build a training facility for future pastors, leaders, and ministries. That's happening right now. But I want to finish with this. I know time's gone. I want to finish with this. This next dream hasn't been fulfilled yet. But the hope that the Lord has in my heart, when He showed me on that mountain, the dream that's so deep in my heart, it's the biggest dream I could ever have. He said this to me. He said, you will have a son, and you will name him Ezekiel. He will be a mouthpiece for me, a prophet amongst the nations. I just want to remind you that just because I lost 2 children before, just because it's been 7 years and every time I fast, we don't see the breakthrough that we hope, I still live in my now with a visualization and a hope of the after. And one day He will. And we're going to be super excited. And I'm waiting for that dream to come into fruition. I had a bit of a rant with God. I said, you gave us that building. You give us a performing arts school. You give us all these things. What about my son? And I'm still walking around the wilderness for 40 days for my son. Sorry, not the wilderness, the promise. 40 days walking around the promise that my son's going to speak one day. My son's going to rise one day. My son's going to prophesy one day. And even though it looks like that now in our generation and in our nation is in turmoil, I still got a hope for the future. And so I'm here to remind you to navigate through now, leave your before, and keep visualizing your after. Please don't lose hope of your after, because this is all going to blow over. And you're going to find and you're going to be thankful that you were here on Sunday, the 7th of November, because you heard the word of the Lord say, I've got an after. Somebody say, I've got an after.